Hello, everybody. It's awesome day today. So this is an interesting topic, return to office. And I know it's a hot topic for some. It's not a hot topic to others because they know it's going to happen. Some of us don't necessarily agree with that, but that's what this conversation is going to be about. The actual title of this is the ROI of RTO, maximizing employee engagement during the return to office. All right, guys, have fun.
It seems like it's been such a long time. When did I see you guys? All right, so I didn't give this group much prep, but the title I think is kind of obvious. And I want to thank you for stepping in at the last minute.
Fantastic.
Unfortunately, as most of you know, there have been many rounds of new layoffs here in our neighborhood and in our valley. And so we lost two of our panelists in the last literally few days. And interestingly enough, not because they got laid off, luckily, but because of the layoffs at their companies, they were asked to keep a very low profile. And I can't say I blame them. I understand. But so I want to thank some of our folks for stepping in today at very short notice.
Very short.
And I think we'll start at that end. And why don't you just do a quick introduction of yourself?
Sure, I'm Matt Morgan with Ross Video, do business development for all of our corporate markets globally.
I'm Andrew Cross. I've worked in Pro AV for 25 years, more. I was heavily involved in the creation of NDI and all sorts of other AV technology, so this is an area I just love. Great to be here.
Okay, that wins the Modesty Award. He's the guy who invented NDI and started New Tech. So.
Morning, everyone. My name's Wes Choy. I'm with Netflix. I'm the global builds manager representing all of the different regions within the company's property. So we work in collaboration media, collaboration systems, event systems, et cetera.
I'm David. Thank you. Netflix, you got to give them a hand. I'm David Adler. I'm the chairman and founder of a media company called BizBash that's brought together the event planning community in all aspects, from corporate to all the different aspects of it. And I'm also the author of a book called Harnessing Serendipity, which you can find on Amazon. And I'm excited about this topic.
Yeah. David wins the award for last minute drafted. So, but definitely an expert on the topic. And so what we're here to talk about today is, we had this pandemic thing. Anybody notice? No. And so getting people to come back to the office has been, I think, a little more challenging than people expected. For us in the production community, and especially in the event side of the production community, it's been, I think, a big, our management is looking to us to help them find ways to bring people back in, to engage. And you can tell by the attendance today, we've got more than 700 people registered for this. People do want to get together. So the question is then, why is it so difficult to get people to come back into the office? And what can we as a community do to help support our employers? So our first question, and I think David will start with you, is,
okay.
You've been in the event production business as long as anybody here. Clearly, the mindset has changed. What do you see as the challenge?
Well, first, let's go back to what happened during the pandemic. The C-suite needed to know who the hell their customers were and who their employees were, and they didn't know anybody, so they went to their underground networks. And their underground networks turned out to be the communications people and the event people that seemed to know everybody. And then they added this new technology called Zoom and video and things like that. So basically, we trained an entire industry how to use video to connect people. Now we have to go the other way. So now we have to sort of teach people that going to the office is an event. And all of those skill sets should be primarily used. People are not going to be forced to go to the office. They are going to want to go to the office. People didn't get up today and said, I'm going to be forced to go to this conference. So how do you do it and make it exciting and interesting, and the ROI is it scales relationship, it scales getting more money, it scales better things that are going to go on in your company. And how do you convince people that they have the flexibility to do both?
Wes?
Yeah, I mean, I think that some of the trend lines that we're seeing right now are, with a lot of the systems that we're designing, the spaces that we're programming, it's, looking at bringing that offsite back onsite. We've got some really great partnerships with our facilities teams and with our events teams where they want to have that be the attraction, the allure to get the people back into the office. And as much as I'd like to say it's a 1 RU box that you can buy to get people back in and we can build a system around that. People are looking for that level of engagement. And for people that might not be coming back into the office or they still want to be remote or they can't make it, I think that there's a particular digital ecosystem that we need to build to make sure that that video content, that digital content, isn't just kind of this passing kind of ephemerality and just kind of dissolves. So there's certainly a lot of work that needs to be done, both on the physical hardware side and on the facility side, and then also with those partnerships, working with internal marketing comms and other types of office engagement type of partnerships. So it is a whole ecosystem of solutions that need to come together to get that type of engagement back in the office.
So Andrew, I think you can go next as the guy who invented a lot of the technology that allowed people to not come back.
It's your fault, right?
So I actually think this is a very interesting conversation because in some ways, let's forget the office for a second and just think about business. How many companies actually do business where they meet face-to-face with their customers anymore? Because it almost doesn't exist. How many people meet with their vendors face-to-face anymore? The world is no longer a face-to-face business, and what happened in the pandemic is that just got extended to being employees as well. And I think that that's very interesting because, we were lucky the technologies existed at that moment in time to allow us to do that. If that hadn't happened, who knows what would have happened? But I'm not sure that it's that different. We're all now used to working with our customers that we don't meet face to face. But so how does this, employees, it can somewhat be the same, can't it? But I actually think that at the same time there is huge value, and I find, look, every one of us here thought that it was worth dealing with the traffic to come and meet each other. And there is some huge value there. And how we get this balance right, I think that it's a new norm. I think it's not about going back to the way it was. It's about something different and working out what kind of relationships work in what kind of environment. And I don't think it's just about return to office. I think it's a new way that we all interact. And I think that, it's going to be really interesting to see kind of how this lands. And we're going to place probably far more value on these personal interactions. But there are a lot of interactions where they can work remotely and we can take advantage of that. So I've not answered your question at all, have I? But I think that what's happening is actually more fundamental and far more interesting.
So Tom, working for Ross, I suspect you see this from a couple of different places. From the point of view of vending equipment that helps solve some of this, but Ross itself has grown to be a quite large company and just the internal comms there. I'm curious how you guys are dealing with this even inside the company.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny because this time last year when we were sitting having these conversations, the panel was online first and how we approached that and the shifts that we had to make. So everyone here, congratulations. You did a great job. No one wants to go back to work. That's what we've learned, right? In business development, I like to use data to push decisions, right? It helps me have an argument to be made for investing in the technology for a certain reason. So Gallup reports that at the end of 2023, only a third of employees are actively engaged in the workplace. So they're going to work, they're happy, they're not scrolling Facebook, sorry, Meta people. They're not scrolling, job postings. They're engaged in work, they're happy, they're not going anywhere. What's funny is that a little bit more than a third, so from the 30 to 40% of people who are hybrid or remote are actually more engaged with work than they are if they're back in the office. So looking at that from my perspective, I asked this question: how do we get on-prem and cloud and all these different things to work together to engage people? And I got to go to a consultant site in downtown yesterday, and it was incredible how they looked at their workplace and how they wanted to leverage it. So the workplace, used to be you went and you invested in this system, and this is the collaboration tool you used. Now you walk in the office, and the office has to conform to you. You take your work, being your laptop, home, and you get to set up home the way that you want to set up home. Now the office needs to also be able to be set up in a way that is engaging for you and works for you and your platform of collaboration. So how's that technology investment going towards that? And that's how we're looking at it. What can we do? So Ross, from a point of view of being a manufacturer, is how can we provide the most solution base to cover whatever we need for customers? So, like we use our hyperconverged with Ultrix, things like that. And now NDI has been a huge portion of what conversations happen in the corporate space. And now NDI is going to be available from a hyperconverged point of view across our platform. So it's things like that, like what helps the customer be more engaged and is more accessible. So we're seeing those things, trying to look at trends and then make the gear work for the customer versus saying, this is our gear, this is how you should use it in your context.
So I'm going to come back around, David, because I think the next part of this that kind of goes with this is one of the things I've personally been fascinated about is, we build these wonderful venues where people come and have experiences and sit in their audiences. And there's, 200 people in the room, 500 people in the room. And then there's 20,000 people watching a stream. And the parity of experience, not very. And I'm curious, again, as we walk across, and I know all of you have been working on this particular problem, to see how you think we should approach this.
I have two things. First, I think the next generation of hybrid is going to be massively different than what we're seeing today. And that's going to change everything. I think that all the brains in this room are working on that. The number two thing in response to what you were saying, everyone was saying earlier, is the ROI in not going to the office is going to be reduced real estate costs. And I think that you're going to have offsites that are going to be off the charts. Because when you do create an experience that brings everyone together, they're going to be outrageous. And I think video and screens and LEDs and all that great stuff is going to be so much part of the programming and so much part of the learning that it's going to make this business even more profitable and more necessary to communicate to large groups. And then also I'm seeing a whole lot of new collaboration techniques in rooms. And going back to simple things like conversations. I mean, I do these specialty things called Jeffersonian dinner parties all the time, which are business oriented, and people just want to be heard. And that's where the serendipity happens, and that's where the connections happen. And the number one question that I ask when I bring people together was, what was your first job and what did you learn from it? And then all of a sudden, everyone relates to that person who worked at Baskin Robbins. And so you're creating these personal connections that make people want to be together, and they'll talk forever and they won't leave. And that's where the collaboration happens. So it's these collaboration studies we talked about that I think are going to be more important than actually the physical setups.
Yeah, I mean, I think to just piggyback off of that, it's that, when we have these current, and all hands is happening, is that, we might have a few thousand people on a particular call. It is a very unidirectional experience, which is unfortunate for that remote participant. So we're thinking about, there's a number of different SaaS products that have come up recently that are really geared towards employee experience platforms. And I think that is kind of like probably the glue that needs to hold a lot of things together in order to have certain types of activities that promote that communication, that foster that culture. Because without that remote worker is just kind of floating in space. And then on the other side of the scale is like you might have, some big companies, and I work for another large social media company where there were like 30,000, 50,000 people on a call, and you've got chat and everyone's talking about how shiny someone's forehead is, and it's rolling by at about 5,000 miles per hour. And it's like, what type of value is that bringing? So there's probably some boundaries to be pushed in terms of, using either machine learning or AI in order to have some type of curatorial effect effect and moderation effect at scale. So I think that that's certainly an area to develop into. And then, lastly, on the tail end of things, I was talking about the ephemerality of that digital asset, is that I was talking to my SVP the other day about what she was excited about, and she said, enterprise search. And I'm like, what? Enterprise search? And I was like, she's like, we can never find anything. Well, it's like, how do we have that value is built into the production and all the costs that went into making that event? Let's let that continue and live on. So how can we harness other types of machine learning in order to push that content to all the different groups of employees and to see what is important to that particular individual in order to try to continue to build that sense of community through digital media?
Like the thing is, like, you're sitting here and listening to this, how do you communicate it right back to your people in a minute?
Yeah.
So that you're spreading the word. I mean, I used to do that on Slack and all those things, but it's not that efficient.
No, and it exists in that siloed platform. So it's like, what is the aggregator for that particular asset and that particular, the particular event or type of messaging and communications that you're pushing forward?
So I think this is very interesting because we are jumping to the assumption that it's large events. And I think it's always been very difficult in large events for an audience to participate in the event. It's just the nature of that event, isn't it? But technology, so video technology is becoming more accessible, have allowed us to do smaller events. And those are going to be the ones in which we really have a great opportunity to reach better engagement. And I think that, the company all hands is always going to be somewhat of the company giving its message to the employees, but we now have the ability to create much smaller events where we can give people a voice in a very different way. And this is something new. Technology, this wasn't possible 10 years ago. You had to roll out a production truck. And so we've got something new now that I think we need to learn how to use that can massively help in engagement and return to office that I don't think fully understand and know how to quite do yet, but I think that's what makes this whole industry exciting, isn't it? I think that there's massive growth here, isn't there, in these smaller events that allow for better engagement.
I say in events, and it's probably in the workplace, is how do you scale intimacy? Because that's really what it's all about. How do you make you feel like you had all these people, but you had that amazing conversation with that one person that changes your life, even at the office, or that serendipity moment.
Yeah, there's those moments that happen, and where that whole process comes together, and it's like, as much as I always want to say like, it's an engineering solve, this is a room full of engineers, a room full of technologists, is that all of those elements go together as like you're telling a story. There's a beginning, middle, and an end. What is that end piece? What is that end state where you have to have the message push forward? But how are you fostering those particular types of connections? And I think that there's a lot of, the ROI is also being pushed forward as like, how is that productivity being measured? And also with a particular event, large or small, is that there needs to be a lot more work done, I feel, in terms of what is the conversion factor? Is like, what is the actual outcome of said event? If I plan a meeting, it's like, what do we get out of it? So there's probably a lot of the kind of minor steps along the way that are facilitated by all different types of technologies. And it's, I think we're just striking the tip of the iceberg at this point.
Tom?
It's Matt, sorry.
That's right.
I like what Wester said. Basically getting to know your stakeholders better now, right? So I think as we make decisions for technology and technology that works for, like the analogy is we all have a kitchen at home, but when you go to a commercial kitchen, it should be better. You should have more, effectiveness, and it should maybe be a little bit easier to cook whatever you're cooking. So while the technology, that being the laptop at home, you can set it up how you like to. When you get in the office, it operates another way. But now you have all these other stakeholders who have to have buy-in to that particular place, whether it's a conference room or it's a small event center, a bigger event center like this. How does all of that technology work together? And we have to have more conversations now, getting outside of the engineers and maybe working with a more creative person. What's the programming look like? How do we engage? Being more in tune with what the online attender and the in-person attender, and trying to close the gap between the different experiences and having the same experience, and creating that intimacy and creating that connection to make sure that all the stakeholders are feeling the return on that investment of coming back in office or being hybrid, being remote, things like that. So I think having those more in-depth conversations are super important as we continue to figure out what hybrid means now, right?
I agree. I think, one of the things I wanted to pivot to is during the pandemic, I was able to participate in a whole series of workshops around meeting issues, technologies, social issues. And I'm really curious in this group how important you feel it is to address, well, we'll call it loosely DEI. Let's the idea that not everybody's comfortable in a big group, or how do we give people safe spaces away from bright flashy lights because the event producer decided they wanted a disco ball over the stage. And let's go in reverse order this time. So Matt, we'll start at your end.
Yeah, I've never thought about that. But what I have seen is we give people the option to view in a way that suits them the best. So if that's on your mobile device, if it's at a computer, if it's a workplace and you have different environments. I was in one where the front of the office was very open. It was meant for collaborating, for open engagement, but then the back of the office was meant to be way more silent, more focused, space to work and not engage with other people, but you still have the space. So there's even that. You could do the same thing for your event, So these are the options that you can provide to employees or intenders or whoever's taking in that content, whoever your audience is. Here are your options. And all of them are available on these different platforms, which we are able to hit now as a destination, in whatever we need to. So I would say find different ways that do work to that, to meet the needs of people who have different thoughts on how they would like to consume their content.
I actually think that you're raising one of the big unsolved problems that all of us need to start thinking about. I think we've now got the technology to easily produce video. We've got the technology to transport it to any of our employees. How do we create an environment that allows all of those employees to contribute in the way that they feel comfortable with? And I don't think we have the answers, because I think this is super new. In the pandemic, we just had to make do. We just, it was like Zoom meetings it is, And now the world has changed. And this is one of the big unsolved problems is how do we build technologies? We as technologists, we're thinking about technology and not people. And we've got to work out how we connect those two things to make this new world where people are hybrid and are remote so that they can connect with each other. And I think that this is one of the great challenges for our industry. Really exciting one too, because video is all about getting people to connect, isn't it? So this is one of our great challenges that we have looking forwards. I find it very exciting.
Yeah, in terms of inclusivity, Netflix has certainly taken a very bold step forward in having that baked in their culture. And when you think about trying to have an inclusive environment where you now have this huge group of people that where you can have these technological accommodations, I think it's really good to just start from basics, start from scratch, where part of it, is a bit of an education campaign. It's like, how do we leverage the platform that you're on? And so we're able to not exclude people are, using good etiquette is like raising their hand, making sure that, we can see them, they can be heard. And then also the fact that, when you look at the actual structure of the event planning and even the physical layout of particular spaces and design of spaces, we have to try to eliminate the inequity there by providing people better views. There's also some production value stuff that has to go in there in order to make sure that everywhere people are heard. So, I've seen that, our events teams, they've done really a lot of really good work with trying to play around with bringing that certain level of intimacy back into the room, but also just making sure that people can see and hear, and there are all these different methods in which they're raising that quality back up. So, there's no particular like solution right now. I think also it's just kind of like a combination of many different solutions, but the technology really is, it's the backbone is there to really help facilitate that. Yeah.
No, I think that the disciplines are there. They're just not talking to each other. I do believe that one of the future jobs that's going to be really important is that of the collaboration artist in a company. The collaboration artist, the person that understands the art of facilitation and the art of connecting people digitally and the art of the right questions. And the DEI has to happen with these collaboration artists that know that, varied groups are going to get better results than people that are all exactly the same. And then the second point I want to make is this book that I read that changed everything for me called Social Physics by Alex Pentland. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's about how ideas flow. And so we have to work backwards and see how an idea flows to get people to say, oh, I want to go back to the office, because the idea is going to flow in ways that have nothing necessarily to do with actual talking to each other, but allowing people to have autonomy and thinking their own way. The virus, we lived through this virus. It's called viral because it went from one place to the next to the next. Ideas do exactly the same thing. So we have to have a better understanding of how we tie all these things in together to make the workplace better, to make events more efficient. I mean, there's nothing worse than coming back from an event and you get nothing from it. So we've got to make sure that there is an ROI on every day at the office, every day at an event, every day in your life. There's something that you're happy about or something that makes you want to learn more. So it's a complex. I realize that we're just in the beginning. We're the brick phone era of this solving this problem.
Okay, well, we are almost out of time. So I want to give each of you 30 seconds to try and put forward, what do you think is the most important message you want our audience to take away today? And Matt, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I would just say in everything that we do, I like to think of the big picture years down the road, right? What we're talking about today are going to solve problems a few years from now. So as you do look for that ROI on technology and the investment of your people, make sure that it's technology and that does serve a grander purpose than just what it can do today or what the need might say. Like, I need to put this signal on that screen. Okay, but how does that get somewhere else in a way more collaborative way where more than one person can come do that, right? So just thinking about the bigger picture and investing in the right technology ahead of time so that we can really grow and scale as we solve these problems as time goes on.
Andrew?
So I think we're at this unique moment because we have all of the technologies to do all the stuff. So the question is no longer about building the technologies. I think we've done that. The question is, how do we use them in better ways? And I think that is one of the great challenges for us. It's now possible to move video anywhere in the world really cheaply, really easily. How do we make that really work for real people in the real world? Because we've been doing it this has not been possible before. We now have ways to do things that we couldn't do before. So 50 years ago, you had to make a show that was one to many. We don't anymore. How do we take advantage of that? How do we make it connect with people? And I think that is going to happen. It's inevitable that will happen, and I think that represents, for every one of us, probably the biggest, most exciting change that we're going to see in the way that humans interact with each other. And that's really exciting, and I think we're all going to be part of that. So I remain very optimistic, and I think we've got some great problems to solve as an industry.
Yeah, that's a good one, good closer, Dave. And I probably leave this room with your success. All of our success here is really defined by how successful you work with your partners. Is that gone are the days of grumpy broadcast engineer pushing someone away from the rack. It's like we need the network security people. We need this partner. We need the person in comms in order to have that level of engagement to bring back. So that's the number one that I would put forth is that think about your partners and how you engage them. That's the way to success.
I guess my big takeaway or future hope is that we're breaking the fifth wall so that there is no difference between talking to someone on video and talking to someone in person, and that the emotional exchanges, the science, the magnetism between the people, the oxytocin exchanges, actually it doesn't matter whether you're in a screen or whether you're in person. That's my hope.
Well, I want to thank all of you. Truly inspirational today. And I couldn't have had better panelists, especially with some last-minute ads. You guys were awesome. Thank you all very much, and enjoy the day.
Stay safe.